Normally, I start this off, and I'm going to start this off with an introduction, but we've spent 12 minutes just riffing about general human shit that feels good and what we're working on and kind of like the I want to say trajectory of where we're envisioning the future or visioning at the speed of thought right now of what the future looks like. We could have just recorded that and had that be the Love Language Leadership Summit. And I think everybody would have benefited from that, got something from it, because we were just going boom, 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 so fast. So we decided to just hit record. Otherwise it would just been, we're just shooting the shit for a bunch of hours.
True.
Okay. So we're going to dive right in. Whether you guys are tuning in with us via YouTube or you're listening in audibly somewhere, hello, welcome to the Love Language Leadership Summit. I am Shannon Wooten, and with me today I have co-founder of the Valhalla Movement, super cool, a mission to make communal living mainstream by living in earthships, which, by the way, sidebar, if you guys don't know what that is or what it means, just Google Valhalla Movement YouTube and watch, I think it's like a 3.5-minute video. It's thought-provoking, groundbreaking, insightful, and I'd love to see it here in the US if it doesn't already exist. Also, founder of the Superhero Academy. Another very cool. This guy is just very, very cool. Does a lot of cool shit, which empowers business leaders to utilize their powerful purpose to become engaging storytellers, to increase action, movement, and create impact. And, if that's not enough, entrepreneurial champion, empowering you to believe in your inner hero, to lead a life you're passionate about. Thank you for being here, Marc Coppola.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I feel like you did a better job of describing all the things that I do with more passion and zest than even I can bring to the table. That's saying a lot. So thank you so much for having me. Honestly, I appreciate being here. And I also appreciate you. I really feel like you and I resonate in some way, shape, or form. I don't know why, but I appreciate that.
I love that. I love the honesty. And if you, you probably can already hear it and just glean from it in the few short sentences that he's already contributed to this summit, is that what you see is what you get with Marc. And I love that. There is, and this I think plays into the power of love, just what you said so eloquently and so organically. There's sometimes you encounter people in life and you just have a click, a vibe, the sameness you can instantly identify with. And I had the absolute pleasure and honor, thank you, universe, yes, for having Marc on our Soul in the Raw podcast, which I co-host with Olivia Celine. And I remember saying something to you like, you had a Gary V energy. But Marc has, and I love Gary, okay? No shade being thrown here. Respect for everybody and their genius, because let's face it, Gary is a genius.
Literally, for sure.
Totally, yeah. Somebody was asking me earlier this week, what is it about somebody that you admire that you admire? And the first person that came to mind was Oprah. Of course, Oprah is larger than life. I've been obsessed with her since I was in grade school. Really didn't have any awareness as to why, though, because you're young. And it's like, I like this person, kind of like you just said, just that sameness that you connect to.
Feel it. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I recognized in all these years of just admiring and hanging on with bated breath every word that Oprah basically says and utters and things that she is championing about in her life is that there doesn't feel like a giant gap between me and Oprah. It does, when you get the elevation and realize, yeah, she's a billionaire and she is just this larger than life personality and she's done amazing things. For me, it always felt like there was that sameness. Like she allowed you to believe in your potentiality, the limitlessness of your potentiality, and that if she can do it, man, she certainly believed that you could do it, but that was not her job to make you believe that. That was your job, your onus, your ownership. And when I thought about you coming on and doing this out of the goodness and kindness of your heart, which is really just, I think, who you are at the core, that's your impact, following your heart. And I thought about that with you. That's what I feel the difference between you and Gary is for me personally, is that there is a sameness with you and accessibility with you that doesn't feel like if I sat down with you and had a conversation, it would be so far above my head that it wouldn't be digestible for me. It wouldn't be something that I felt like, you know what, I could create an earth ship too.
Wow. I really appreciate that. I mean, I get compared to Gary Vee a ton.
I'm
a
sure.
ton. Just because I speak at a certain cadence and I'm kind of unapologetic and I'm a million things that I would say Gary resonates with. But I also I would say that I go to the school of Gary Vee, meaning I have a very similar thought pattern around attention and the attention economy. And so many of the philosophies and the core foundational elements that inform him, I think inform me. And
Mhm.
it's so hilarious because right before this podcast, again, you mentioned somebody like Peter McKinnon earlier,
Yep.
but I was also looking at Gary came out with like how to make 64 pieces of content in one day. And so I was literally like just scrolling through this right before I got on this call and this podcast. So yeah, no, I mean, I think you nailed something very powerful there. And I feel that same way. I feel a little less than Oprah because I think she was just a bit before my time. She was
Right.
just past her peak right before my time. But I feel that with like Ellen DeGeneres, for example. Like, I'm like, how this person makes a living giving away things and like money and dancing and being fun and exciting and beautifully. Like, I find that so incredible that people have made a career out of just being awesome.
Yep.
And that's like the simplest way of saying it. But she, both Oprah and Ellen and many others are just incredibly, incredibly attuned and likable characters. And
Mhm.
it's because they're not playing a character. And I would say Gary Vee, the same thing.
Yeah.
Gary leans into it a little bit, depending on who he's speaking to, I find. But I believe that the number one character you can play is just the best version of yourself. Right.
Yeah.
And everyone says that. It's so easy to like, be the better version of you. You know what I mean? Like, oh, great. Yeah. Thank you, meme farm. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like so like, no, but come on. Like every person says it, but it's like, but I think certain people really, truly embody it.
Mhm.
And are looking to embody it in every detail. And so for me, those details are kind of what I focus on. I focus on those small little things that are unnoticeable. Like, what does
Mhm.
this look like here? And, you know, that fireplace in the background that's on the TV or whatever, like
Boy.
all these little details create the impact that we get to have through our own version of art and expression and all that stuff. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that you notice the details. Like I think that's part of why I resonate with you is that you're picking up on something that most people aren't, right? Like most people are listening to this and kind of, they hear the words and they're focused on those words. And that's, one of the love languages that a lot of people have is words of affirmation. So they focus on like the surface piece of it. And I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's just saying that that's what most people focus on.
Yep.
But there's so many other layers to it that I find are so much more fascinating for me.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying too. And something to point out, I think that's very important is that everybody that you mentioned, Gary is most notably noted at this time as having an opinion. Like
Yes.
this man has built a career off of, I have very strongly grounded opinions. And
Yep.
it's insightful, right? It allows us to be like, could I share that? And what's the value in that? But that's the important part that I feel like people miss. And what you said is like, be yourself. I agree. I think it's important. I think that we gloss over the fact that it can be challenging. However, these people that you've pointed out, Ellen, Oprah, Gary, what we miss in what they're doing so beautifully, it's almost like a dance where they're being themselves to such a point that we don't get caught up on the fact that they have an opinion.
Yes.
And a lot of people get tripped up by having an opinion because they get so far invested in the other side of the street of what will someone perceive as my intention with that. And I think the thing that on top of things, right, there's so many layers to why Gary and Oprah and Ellen resonate and relate and work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most notably being that they're just themselves, but also that, and this is something I have deconstructed myself very recently in going in on love yourself, be your own friend, love languages. If you're a verbal processor, how do you communicate with yourself? Is that I think they have maybe not nailed it, but figured it out in a way that works for them, that they're not so ego driven, that they're trying to be in the other side of the conversation, predicting what's going to happen. They're just inside their conversation, their truth, their own processing of what's happening in them.
Yeah, I think it goes even beyond the word opinion. The nuance of that to me is like the reason why Gary's able to, like, you ask him a question, whatever, his style is like go up on stage, say some theory, and then ask questions.
Right.
The whole point of what he's saying is the whole element of that, what he's bringing forward is he has a theory. on life. He has a theory, like, so, you know, I was watching the Imagineering thing about Walt Disney. Walt Disney believed that everyone was good.
Yep.
That's a theory that he gets to embody. And so it informs every question, every decision, every way that he was acting in his life. And I believe the same is true for Gary and Ellen and Oprah, is that they're not just, the reason why their expression comes out and is so authentic and so powerful is that they're not thinking about like, oh, is this the headline? Like Gary's the most, obviously the one who, the most engineering of headlines in that way. And they know where it is. Like they understand how attention works, right? I'm not saying they're not using it or understanding of it. What I'm trying to say is that they're not searching for it. They're just moving through it, and they are natural headline makers. They're natural kind of leaders embodying their theory fully. And that theory is so ingrained in who they are that it's authentic. Like you meet them in person, I feel like they're the same person as you see on TV or YouTube or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many places that we could go and unpack what it is that you just said, because I think that we get stopped in our own self-actualization because we're trying to have it all figured out. And we feel like we can't present a new idea, theorize, share, become a visionary about something because we don't have it all figured out. When I think the magic of what I hear you're saying is so powerful about Gary and Oprah and Ellen and you and me and everybody that's listening is that we have the capacity and the power to decide that we can figure it out as we go along. We can fuck it up. We can make mistakes.
Totally.
We can totally win and celebrate it and advertisement and like, look at this shit that I did because I trusted myself. I loved myself. And that's the thing that I think is so special about whoever you guys, you know, whoever you're listening right now, whoever inspires you, motivates you, whatever, insert name here, obviously apply as applicable for you. But I think the thing that they've discovered within themselves is how to be in process of evolution as it's happening without getting so stuck on, do I have it right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think they're spending a lot of time thinking about whether they have it right. I think they're just spending a lot of energy being in alignment with who they are and their previous understandings of themselves and their own theories.
Oh, so powerful and so applicable for what we're talking about today, because what I hear you saying is that there's a responsibility we have to ourselves to actually respect yourself, love yourself, and also respect yourself and love yourself to get out of your own way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you know, and that's a practice that's, you go after it endlessly. I think all of us get in our own way. I believe Oprah still gets in her own way.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I think it happens at all scales and all levels. And over time, you just get better and better at dealing with it or catching yourself within that, and kind of navigating your own ship and your own internal guidance system through those challenges.
So of all the things that we talked about earlier in your introduction, and again, go Google Valhalla Movement, go look up the Superhero Academy. I have privy to understanding these things because I've already talked to Marc before, but my interpretation, so you can correct me if I'm wrong here, obviously, is that you are somebody who is very aware of the impact that self-love, but also communal love can bring to the world. So what made you say yes to contributing to this summit today?
First and foremost, I think you are, you're just somebody who I wanted to connect with more. And I thought it was interesting. What I liked about it is that it wasn't going to be another interview where I'm just expressing and explaining the same storyline that I always express and explain, right? Like most podcasts are just like me going on saying the exact same thing. So what's freedom culture? What's this? What's Superhero Academy? Blah, blah, blah. And that's great. Like, that's fine. Somebody doesn't know me. They want to know those things, but I have to say that same story over and over and over again. I literally say it every day. So it's like, that's great. Like I would love to tell the story of the Lion King daily if I had written it. I would love to tell the story of, you know, Beauty and the Beast if I had written that. And that's phenomenal. But as an artist, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who wants to, you know, push the boundaries of something, I'm significantly more excited about the fact that it is raw, that it is unedited, that it is all of these things, because first of all, I'm not worried about what I'm going to say. I know I'm going to say things that are consistent with my frame of mind. Right.
Nice.
And sure, everyone does that, right? Like, I don't know, a famous Canadian got grilled recently. Don Cherry just, spurts out some things. I believe he was speaking his truth. And so I think like, I'm not even going to talk about what he said. The point is, I honor somebody who's willing to speak their truth regardless of what that is and doesn't apologize for it necessarily. It doesn't mean that they don't regret having said it a different way or whatever it is, but that they're saying, look, this is how I felt, and this is what my full expression was, and that's interesting. So I believe the best podcasts out there, and the proof is in the pudding. If you look at like a Joe Rogan, it's not about the script. It's not about like, what can I tell you on a stage or what you can find on my website. Like, go fucking find it over there. You know what I mean? And I apologize for my French, but the idea of like, if you want to go find that, I made the perfect story and the perfect videos and all the things over there, right? And it's not because I made them that they're perfect. It's just they're well crafted. They're thought out. They've been thought out for a long time and been told for a long time and refined on that. For me, it's the authenticity and the real rawness that I believed and I knew you would bring to the table, so that it moves me away from like, here's my comfort zone into, not that this is uncomfortable for me at all. It moves me into something that's actually interesting for me. And I know that when I'm interested and I'm engaged, I'm gonna share a lot more value and a lot more power than just me spewing it, for the sake of, here's my story, here's my perfect pitch, let's say.
Yeah. And there is so much power in what you're saying, because I do, again, going back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, I think that there is right now, social media and the world at large is very accessible, and that's fan-freaking-tastic. Like, how amazing is it that you can run a whole business from, your fucking spare bedroom, that's
my living room,
office, in your sweatpants, just like really applying yourself, but in a way that feels authentic for you. And in the world at large, that's amazing, right? It's amazing. But there's also a lot of things that can trip us up, that make us feel like we need to be curated, and it needs to all have the same message. And yes, there's a value in sameness and identification and relationship where you can find yourself in somebody else, but what are you really like, right? What is it when it's not curated? Who are you when you're just being yourself? And so I hear, again, going back to what we talked about at the beginning, that for me, you're just such an authentic person. It's almost like you don't know how else to be. And
I actually don't. I don't know how to be somebody who's, I cannot hold back my real thoughts and character. Like it just, and if there's one privilege that I've been born with, it's that. I was raised in a way somehow that just says, you speak what you think, period. And it's not, I'm not trying to say like you blurt it out, you speak over people, you like, there's definitely, ways of doing that are more conscious or unconscious than others. Right. But at the end of the day, when somebody asks me what I feel, what I think, I tell them it straight. I'm not going to, I don't want to sugarcoat it and politically correct it just so that it essentially doesn't cause discomfort for other people. I revel in the fact that I cause discomfort for other people. I know that if I were doing it the same way that everyone else is doing it, I would be more successful to the mainstream. But my goal is not to be mainstream. I'm not looking to try and like do the thing that everyone else is doing. I'm trying to break the game. I'm trying to find ways where the boundaries are for me as an individual, and also for others, that does build an alternative path. Because if I wanted to do the mainstream way, I would just go open up a normal school. I'd go open up a normal real estate project. Like, I would just go do the thing that everyone else is doing. Yep. That's fine. You can make great money doing that, and that's a phenomenal life and perfect for the average person who wants to go in that direction. I have no problem with that, but it's just not for me. So I don't know how to not be authentic. I don't know how to not swear. I don't know how to do whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and I'll be polite about it, right? If I'm in a room full of religious people, I'm going to hold back on swearing a little bit, but I won't hold back on like the aggression that I have in my tone of voice. I won't hold back in the fervor that I will say something. I'll just be respectful of the space. I can read a room nonetheless, right? But I think there's beauty in being fully authentically yourself. There's also beauty in saying, I'm going to respect their, other people's kind of ground rules, because they've worked hard to establish a space and a container and all the things that go with that. So if this is a podcast that I couldn't express myself fully in terms of, let's say, swearing, I'd respect that because you're doing so much work to do those things.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that it wouldn't be heard, or the person would have heard the swear word without me having to say it sometimes too, because the way I'm communicating something. And that's,
Right.
Language is one way that we communicate story, but it's not the only way.
Yeah. And I don't know if that doesn't make you want to go out and just do the damn thing you've been sitting on for the past 5 months. And I don't know. But I'm curious, have you ever received negative feedback of that? Of like, you need to refrain, you need to
100%.
Right.
All the time.
And so I am so grateful that you are so vulnerable and wildly brave to just share the truth of the matter all the time, because as you're talking, I can almost feel, right, the energy of the listener being like, but that's easy because that's how you were born. That's your natural state of being. And, yes and no, because it doesn't come without your own challenges that you're facing from, the quote unquote peanut gallery.
I mean, look, just because I'm bold and expressive doesn't mean that it doesn't cause a lot of problems. And in fact, it probably causes more problems than it needs to. If I were more tame and more willing to play the game sometimes in terms of expression and I'll call it EQ, let's say, right? The emotional intelligence of reading the room and then kind of mimicking that, essentially chameleoning it and dittoing that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm capable of that. I'm super capable. I can be whoever you want me to be. I could be very James Bond-esque, if that makes sense, right? And I love those characters. I love characters that can put on a mask and do those things. I study them greatly, and I'm capable of those things. I've studied NLP, I've studied psychology, I've studied marketing, I've studied these things many, many, many times over. But that's not what excites me, and it's not what I want to do. And I'm not trying to convince or sell something to someone all the time. In fact, most people would associate me as an enroller, right? Somebody who's really good at sales, really good at these things.
Yeah.
And traditionally, I am. I can do those things, but I actually hate that. I look for the conversation where nobody's buying my bullshit. And I'm like, no, like somebody wants to meet me in a different way or wants to challenge me, because that's where I grow.
Yeah.
That's where I find my own natural opinion, is through confrontation, through playing devil's advocate, through being kind of, different. And I've learned to like soften that through just sometimes expressing, hey, I don't really know what my opinion is, so I'm going to play devil's advocate for the minute, because I think that might be useful for both you and I. So I've gotten better at kind of framing my power, let's say, but also framing the negative side of my power, which is that, every superpower that you have, I believe, is also your super weakness, right? It's like, it is the kryptonite that you have, is that we forget that not everyone is like us. Not everyone communicates like us. Not everyone wants to be received or spoken to the way I'm spoken to. But I grew up in I have an Italian father who's a lawyer, and I have a Sicilian mother who is an entrepreneur. Unless you are forward in the way that you express yourself, you're not heard. Right. So yes, part of it is my upbringing. Part of it is those different things. But when I was young, because I had such strong figures in my family or around me, I was shy. I didn't like to, I used to hate calling people. I used to hate like interacting with certain types of things. And I feel that sometimes. I mean, there's certain moments where I feel a little shy or a little whatever. But at the same time, I don't know. I'm more afraid. I am more afraid of being normal and more afraid of not expressing myself than I am of expressing myself. And I think just most people feel the opposite pain, right? So I'm motivated, or like any human, I experience the same range of emotion. The only difference is that my normal or my baseline has been shifted, and that took time, and that took me checking in with what was true to me. And I used to ask myself, and I still ask myself two questions. One, what would Batman do, right? In my position, what would Batman do?
Yeah.
And two, is this really me, right? Like, am I really doing this? Like, am I doing this because of the way I was socialized to be? Or am I doing this because this is a politically correct way of going about it? Is this the way that the room wants me to go? Or am I doing this because this is actually me? Mm-hmm. And those two questions really help guide me. And again, it's back to, it's not just an opinion. I've built a theory for myself in the way I want to show up in the world. And that permeates in all the things that I do, all the businesses, ideas, relationships, so on and so forth that I have. And it guides me. So I don't have to think about it. It just happens. I'm not thinking about what I'm talking about right now. It just comes. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah. And I, again, when you have a conversation with someone that you know that you've been exposed to before, sometimes you go into with a preconceived notion like, oh, like that conversation you're not willing to have with your dad, but you know you have to have with your dad, and you know your dad's going to pontificate to you about life and what his experiences are and all that stuff, and you're like, Dad, I know you're brilliant, you're amazing, but I actually don't give a shit. Love you, mean it, but I don't care about this, right? Like you can go in with that way, or you can come at it with another way of being like, oh, he's going to spew some genius on me, right? Some wisdom of his life experience. And this is one of the reasons why I definitely was like, without a doubt, I created a list of here's the top people I want to participate in this. And if I could get it, here's who they'd be. And in my hope and in my perspective of what I envisioned for this love language leadership is that you would do just that, that you would come and you would be the person that's like, don't allow yourself to not follow the rules, right? What would that feel like? Allow yourself to create your own rules. Allow yourself to think outside your box. So you have a history with yourself where notoriously you don't trust, like, or even love yourself. So you have a history with self-abandonment. So you have a history getting stuck and turning back around and going back in your comfort zone, which is where everything you already know exists and everything's already played out. And you're choosing it again and again because you're comfortable with the discomfort. I, you know, obviously wanted this to be organic, but Marc is that person that gives you goosebumps on your arms and make you feel like you can create your own network. You can become the next Gary Vee, and you can become the next version of something that hasn't even existed yet.
Totally.
So, and for that very reason, I am curious then, what does love mean to you?
Yeah. So love languages, I'm learning about love languages more and more. I would say over the last 18, 24 months, it's been a journey of understanding, because I was very selfish in my love, meaning I would always communicate the way I wanted to be communicated to. And I would always kind of give out love language the way I wanted to receive love language. So my highest love language is acts of service. When people do things for me, like just small things, little details, that is everything for me. I love that. I don't need to be told I love you. I don't need, like, this is not to say I don't receive it or that I don't think about it in a way that is positive or that is helpful. Right. It's always helpful to be told I love you in any love language, essentially. But there are some that are dominant for me and very powerful, and then others that are like, whatever. And for me, love isn't just the positive of love. It's actually the entire spectrum.
Yeah.
So I see pain and kind of hatred as a kind of like a negative scale of love, but it's all love. Yeah. Everything you're experiencing, every emotion you're experiencing is somewhere on the spectrum of, let's say, -10 to +10. And you just get to interpret the way that somebody approached you or interacted with you or communicated with you, depending on your own frame and your own bias. So when my mom yells at me, I know that that's her way of saying, I love you.
Yes.
Just because I've understood that that's the way she grew up with, and that's her way of saying, I want to protect you, I want to support you, but I don't want you to be an idiot to make a bad decision. And that doesn't mean that, and like other people see that and they're like, oh my God, you have that horrible, oh my God, you need to solve this. And I'm like, no, you would want to solve this. I don't need to. I've learned to accept it this way, and I've learned to receive it differently because of the way that I've chosen to reframe or to never even frame it the way you framed it, to essentially say, no, this is the way I do accept love from this person. And it's not to say that my mom or somebody else can't find a better way of expressing it. And that's what I'm working through now, is how do I meet people where they are? How can I give them the love language they want to receive? Not because it's better for my business or it's better for enrollment, which it is, 100% is. But also because I get to do that. It's actually exciting for me. It challenges me. And that's back to my theory of I want to be challenged. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy doing things that are not the way I normally do them. So moving in that direction and saying, oh, wow, when I'm like a little softer, when I say thank you, or when I express gratitude more, people like really receive that. And it's such an 80-20 of like the smallest little thing I can do to support people. And so for me, love is everything in a sense. It's all forms of expression in every category of it. And people are just doing the best that they can with what they have, right? And some people express love violently or more aggressively, and other people express love more softly. And I don't think that any of them are better or worse. I think right now we're in a period of time where like the softness is being kind of championed, and we're sinking further and further into that direction for now. And that's great. And it's horrible in some ways too. I just feel like it's an illusion. It's creating illusions of like, it could always be this way versus, you know, accepting the entire spectrum of the ways that we express ourselves as humans. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's definitely how I'm experiencing it.
I think it's a great answer. Number one, because it's yours and it's true. So I believe in that. And also because to me, and you know, you can tell me if this is totally off base, wrong, whatever. But to me, what I hear you saying is, my automaticity is to be challenging. My automaticity is to be strategic and mindful in a way that services that challenge.
Yep.
And what I hear for you and what you're saying is that that's my automaticity. I don't have to make it wrong. I don't have to dismantle it. I don't have to burn it down so I can rebuild it in a way that is acceptable or redeemable or according to anybody else's standards.
Yep.
Because to my standards, I like that about me.
Yep.
And I can love that because it's in service of me. But what is challenging for you is to see how you can also pause, not always be running a million miles an hour, not always be solution engineering, allowing yourself to be in flux and in flow and be challenged by your own self-actualization, your own being, your own essence, and not putting, because again, what
yes, not seeking the challenge from being from outside. I don't need everyone to challenge me, nor should I challenge everyone else. That in and of itself, the fact that me not doing that is itself a challenge. So me not being a particular way or not responding a particular way or not being like, you know, the classic male female kind of conversation is like, you know, a woman will bring up an issue, and I'm you know, speaking in generalizations here, but somebody will bring up an issue, and then many men will say, here's how to fix it, being solution oriented immediately, right? I'm one of those men for sure. And what we can do, or I get to do, and this is the wording I want to use here, not should, not could,
right,
but I get to do is be more receiving and loving and less solution oriented, even if I know the solution.
Yeah.
Right? And the solution, by the way, my solution is maybe what's right for me, but it's not necessarily right for other people. So it's just being so much more mindful about the entirety of my experience and the way that my energy is spewing out into the world. And that's where the challenge is for me, because it's what I would say, I like to say, I talk about the colors and the spectrum. I'm very like root chakra red. I'm very fire. I'm good at igniting things. I'm bringing things to the surface. Like I'm good at like what somebody like a Gary Vee is very good at. But the more that I kind of move into the other realms, the other colors, the other kind of chakras, let's say, not to be hippy-dippy about it, but the idea of like, the more I move into other states, you know, like water, earth, air, right, that aren't so fire, I have so much more room to grow there. And that is a challenge for me, right? So I get to play that game internally, regardless of what's happening around me. And that is really exciting and really fun. And so that's my new growth edge. And I'm getting so much better at it. I was so horrible at it for the longest time, all the way until I would say I turned 30. So yeah, now I get to play in a different space, and I get to understand and play and engineer with other elements that are not my core superpower, but now get to become those things. And that's where I think wisdom is found for me, is not in what I already know. It's on kind of constantly pushing the boundaries of my own comfort and my own understanding.
Powerful. Love is not always comfortable.
No, not at all. I think it's a balance between comfortable and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It has to be slightly comfortable, and it has to be slightly uncomfortable, or else you're not in the right space. Like I think it has to be on the edge of that chaos. And one of the things I talk about all the time is this 51-49. Every election in the States is decided 51-49. Almost everything in life is decided 51-49. Humanity, right? Like you're born a biological woman, born a biological man, 51-49. Like it's like you were just 1 degree away from one being one way or the other. You're one, like, that's incredible to me. It's so incredible to me. Just back to the election thing. that everything is decided 51-49, that every president of the US has decided 51-49 in some way, shape, or form. That is wild.
It is wild.
Wild. And so we are so much more alike than we are different, right? That 49% that we have alike. Now, there's still 2 degrees of separation within that, right? From 51 to 49, there's still 2 degrees difference in that way. But we do get to kind of play with that, and it has to be uncomfortable. I seek discomfort more than I seek comfort.
Yeah. Oh, this is a concept that I'm playing in right now. Living in the middle. I feel like people, once we get to the middle, we're always willing to talk about the starting point, right? Whether it was tragic, like, and then, this terrible thing happened to me, which spawned off into me creating this, and ta-da, look, I have this multi-billion-dollar business. What happened in the middle? Well, that's not glamorous. I don't want to talk about that. Or we have this moment that was like, well, I was so inspired by, this adventure I went on the top of a mountain. I decided I was going to create this business, and then here it is, wonderful, and I don't have to work for the man anymore. And well, what happened in the middle? Well, a lot of stuff I don't really actually remember. I don't want to think about that. And what I hear you speaking to is, what does love mean to you is to take ownership, responsibility, and have reverence for what you believe to be true, what your intention is about yourself, and have right relationship with yourself about that. Mm-hmm. But what I hear that love means to you about other people is also having right relationship with yourself for them, and understanding that you have your own nuances, they have their own nuances. You understand from a place of love and trust and reverence who you are and what your intentions are. Now, if you shoot it across the bow to another person and it doesn't land, you can still be in right relationship by loving their perspective, whether it's completely on point or completely off base with what your intention was. When we're rooted and grounded into what we believe to be true for ourselves, whether it's comfortable or not, we can still have respect for what we believe to be true and what they believe to be true without having to make anybody wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll add one little piece to that for me that came up as you were speaking there. And it's around the idea of expectation. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people expect love and expect things to play out in a particular way, have kids, get married, do things all within a certain time frame. They have particular goals about it. And they go about love in a particular way. Like, I give you a gift, but I expect you to be happy with it, right? And all of these different things that go with that.
Or what did you get for me?
Yeah, 100%, right. So there's so many variations of those expectations, right, and in all the different love languages, all the different things. For me, my life has drastically gotten happier and more loving the less I expect of other people and the less I expect they give to me. And the less I expect of myself having to show up for them in some way, shape, or form too. I get to play that game. I get to be that person because I want to be it, but I don't expect me to be it. I don't expect me to be it all the time. I don't expect any of those different things. And the more that I just deconstruct my expectations, and the more that I just accept people for who they are rather than trying to change them in any way, shape, or form. Zero. Now, I don't want to change a single thing about a single person at this point. And like, that's the goal, at least, right? I don't feel that way all the time. Definitely not. But that removing of expectation is increasing my happiness, increasing my lovingness, and increasing the love I receive from others and myself tenfold. It's by far the number one way that I've been able to kind of, because again, back to love yourself. No. We all hear this. Right. And then here's the other version of what you were saying too, which is like, what was your game-changing moment that made you unlock your purpose? I'm like, no, it's not a single moment. It's not a single thing. It's like, it's all the things that come with that into that moment and beyond that moment. How do you respond to that moment? But all of those things is that you cannot have that expectation. You cannot expect that it's going to come for you. You can just allow it to be there and make every moment, every detail sacred. Every moment can be this game-changing moment. It doesn't have to be, you survived some car crash and all of a sudden you had this big revelation or aha, eureka thing. I think that we overvalue that, and we overvalue listening to other people to try and find it.
Oh, totally. And this all comes back to where we started at, is I hear you saying that who you are about love for yourself, who you are about love with other people, who you are about love in your business is almost this not pleading, but encouraging with people to become who they are, become aware of, who they are in process, that it's that you are in a continual evolution. So yeah, no shit, who you are today does not mirror and match who you were yesterday. There's not something that you need to make wrong about that. You didn't do anything fucking wrong. Become aware of what's happening in the present, who you are in the present. And when we do, it's almost like I hear you saying there becomes a gateway or a challenge with ourselves to not only become present to who we are and what it is that we want, but to what other people want too. And then it develops a collective of mindfulness, a collective of realizing that what you're actually doing right now in this moment is your future.
Yep. 100%. You know, I equate it to like a radio. If your dial of the radio and your own internal chatter is super high all the time, you're never going to hear other people's frequencies.
Right.
So you're only going to hear your frequency or your perception of their frequency through your lens and through your thought and your emotion, your reception. But the more that you can turn down that dial, and I'm not talking just like meditation, I'm talking like truly listening.
Yeah.
Like truly listening. And back to the philosophy of Gary Vee, a lot of people think he's loud. I think he's a listener.
Yeah.
I think he's just responding to what other people are saying, and he just sees the fucking writing on the wall.
And he's passionate.
He's passionate.
Like,
and he knows how to be passionate, and that's powerful. He knows when to turn it on. And he knows when to shut up and listen.
Yep.
And that in and of itself is so like, it's just, anyway, there's a skill to be had there. And it really is a superpower to listen. It's so novel in the world of like Instagram, check me out, check what I'm doing. This is where I went. No. It's like, yeah, we could talk about that all day, but I don't, that's not valuable. You know what I mean? Like even I came back from ayahuasca in Peru, and the whole thing going down there was about being more EQ, right? Like being like sinking further into listening, further into understanding of myself and of others, and further into being giving. Like one of my heroes is Ellen DeGeneres. Nobody knows that about me, but I believe she embodied giving in a way that's just, I can't. It's incredible. It's incredible to me. So doing that further for me is, and being that further, I think is a better word, is part of the game. And the game is with myself. It's not from a self-centered perspective. Other people are part of it too, but I get to be better than the person I was yesterday, not anybody else.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of truth in what you're saying, at least I believe or subscribe to it, that, you know, there is a lot to be received from embodying and just being love. And I think we create this dynamic with ourselves that says it's wrong to give so as to get. But if the intention is I'm getting or I'm giving from a fullness because I overflow, then everything around me is going to feel that fullness. And if I always think of it like a table, if it trickles out onto the placemats and the silverware and everybody in front of you onto their laps and everything, then it's not that you're losing anything. You're amplifying them, and their receptivity of that amplifies you. Now, are we always going to get that? No, we're not always going to get that. I mean, how many times have you been like, hey, it's nice to meet you, and someone for whatever reason gives you the cold shoulder and you're just like, they hate me. I don't know why. That's weird. But you don't have to make it about you. The giving that you do give is for yourself. It's the game you're playing with yourself. This is the impact I want to make on the world, is that I had so much to give that I didn't hold anything back. So on my last day, in the last hour in my life, I don't feel like I left anything on the fucking table. And then it's like that quote, is it Maya Angelou? People will not remember what it is that you said. They'll remember how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. Again, full circle moment. That's what I feel like Gary is doing when he says to people, post 94 pieces of content. That's his giving. That feels good to him. You don't have to do that if that does not feel good for you. Exactly.
And too many people are trying to emulate the exact way that somebody else did it, but they're not finding themselves in that. They're just trying to replicate the next person, and that's not naturally what's going to work. You could replicate elements of it, you could take away those things, but you have to process it back down to your own superpower in your own way.
Yeah, same thing with Oprah. Like, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car. She wasn't always giving away cars, but when she got to that place, that felt good for her. She's not asking you to justify and validate your existence by giving away a car. Same with Ellen, right? Like, I even think of her, how does she even have a game night show? Like, she does so many things, but that's her way of giving, is showing up and entertaining, because that fulfills her. So taking this full circle, I love full circle moments. They just make me so happy. I guess that's the writer in me, but what we give and how we love and who we are with love does not need to be a replication of anything or anybody else. And it doesn't need to be a damnation either of how other people, places, or things give, receive, or show it. It all comes down to you. The fateful words of Fleetwood Mac. And it is your responsibility, as Oprah does say, your responsibility on this life, on this planet, in this space and time, is to figure out your purpose. And if nothing else that you glean from this conversation today, I hope that you walk away figuring out what love feels like for you, what it is you want to give, and how it is you want to receive it. So to wrap this up, for everybody that's like, whoa, I need some Marc in my life, what's going on? Where can we find you?
What's going on is you're going to go and like this summit podcast. You're going to go and do all the things on this thing, because I don't need you to go and do it anywhere else. And if you want to do it anywhere else, you know where to find me. You know where the links are. I don't need to spew it. I don't need to, if you really loved what I had to say, and I know you did, because you're here, if you're still listening to this, then yeah, ask some questions, go write in the comments, do wherever it is, share, send this to somebody that you feel needs to hear it. But more importantly, embody it. I think the number one thing I would ask of somebody to do right now is, if there's one lesson that you learned, one nugget that you took from this, how can you embody it like right now? How can you take like 1% step, one step in that direction immediately? Like, not later, not when you're going to journal tomorrow morning, like right now. That's what I invite you to do. And you know where to find me.
Wow. So I don't need to give you my spiel then at the end, because Marc basically.
Exactly.
A big thank you to you, Marc, for joining us and just speaking your wisdom and your truth and your power, because love is power. And I have it from this conversation that it just is organic with you, and you give it freely and so beautifully. May we all allow ourselves to heed that and receive it and reflect it in whatever way feels best for us. And a big thank you to you, the audience, however you're tuning in, however you're consuming this, for joining us. Just like Marc said, sharing is caring. So if some part, piece, whatever was insightful and impactful for you, please share it with a friend or someone that you feel can utilize this conversation. Otherwise, please refer to all of the show notes, because I will have Marc's links in there for you to go and check him out, and ask us any questions that you like. We're happy to get back to you. If it's something that you want Marc to speak on specifically, I'll be happy to get that to him as well. Thank you for stopping by. Be good to yourself, for fuck's sake, and we'll talk to you soon.